award-winning documentary called Fatal Mistakes, narrated by Marriott Hartley. Please help me welcome Barbara Rubel.
Would everybody like to just stand up for a minute? We've been sitting for a while the handouts are being passed around. Have a nice stretch. Take out your flasks of whiskey. Now's the time. Do you have my little clicker? Thank you, sir. Thank you for that standing ovation. I didn't even do anything yet. You guys are amazing. Thank you. Have a seat. Yes, as a matter of fact, I took 120 copies. So if, yes, please take from there. I have a lot of extra, so if you want to take extra for other people, she has them right here. Now let's see if the PowerPoints work. You never know. Take a deep breath. Yes! Yes. Well, my name is Barbara Rubel, and 24 years ago, my husband came into the hospital room. I was lying in bed. He sat in this oversized chair, and he was holding a box of tissues. Very strange. He sat in silence and then handed me the box. I didn't have a cold. He said, "Barbara, your dad just killed himself. He shot himself in his head in my childhood bedroom while I was laying there ready to give birth to triplets." So I could not attend the funeral. I didn't attend the wake. I didn't do anything. So when I met Charlotte and she told me about celebrants and how you value ritual and you value ceremony from someone who did not have that opportunity at the time of my dad's sudden death, I realized truly in my heart how significant and how meaningful your role is. So it is truly a privilege and an honor to come here today and speak to you. And especially, I live in New Jersey. As a keynoter, I have to usually get a cab and get a plane ride, and I don't even know where I am half the time. I live like right there. This is great. So I'm so glad to be here. In the beginning of most presentations, we ask, what's in it for me? Well, today there are 5 objectives. This is what's in it for you. We're going to review the Palette of Grief Code of Ethics. Do you have a code that you live by? Your value system, your ethical background, your belief system. We'll look at tips for effective communication skills. Are you a good communicator? Or are you like my sons, where every sentence starts with yo? I don't get it, but maybe it's a New Jersey thing. I don't know. We'll identify ways to respond to challenges, because sometimes people have different personalities than yourself. You've met them. Dysfunctional family members, monopolizers, proselytizers. They're a pleasure to work with, aren't they? Smile. It works. We'll describe determinants, or those things that influence the grief process. So when you are working with someone who has experienced a loss, you know what is influencing their response to grief, bereavement, and mourning. And then we'll discuss how mourning theories are the foundation to create rituals. And that's where you come in. But in order to do that, you really need to look at whether or not you are ready for it. Look at your handouts on page 2. These are your strengths and weaknesses. And many of these strengths are found in funeral directors who are strong-minded, who can take their empathy level to a place where they can hear the stories of sadness over and over and over again. And it is really hard to do. Do you think that you are ready to listen to a story of loss where a child was killed? Are you ready to listen to a story of loss where a father shoots mom and then shoots self? Are you ready to listen to a story of loss where the mother died giving birth? Very difficult. And you have to have the right type of personality to be able to deal with this. So those strengths and weaknesses on page 2 will show you, is this something that you should do? You should also know your values, your hot buttons, those things that really get to you. They make you want to react. Can you work with someone who the family member was raped and murdered? Can you do that? What if it's a school bus and 3 children from the same family were killed? Can you listen to that story and be a part of it? It can break your heart. And that's why we'll end this program by talking about the significance of stress management and burnout and compassion fatigue. Because you have to take care of yourselves. You have to remain healthy. You have to keep smiling. People always say to me, Barbara, you're out there in the trenches working with so many people who have experienced sudden violent death. How do you smile? Well, how do you not smile? So show me your smiles. See, those pearly whites, your dentist is so proud right now. We have to maintain that smile, and we have to keep it in our heart, even when we are hearing the heartbreaking stories that are constantly shared. In order to be effective, you really need to know who you can work with and who you can't. Do you not like working with older population or young people? Do you have a problem working with someone who is an opposite sex than yourself or sexual orientation? What about disabilities? Religion? What if they do not believe in God and they've asked you to be a celebrant? Do you have a problem with that? Ethnicity, race, nationality, accent. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I have an accent. Do you have a problem working with people who have a different accent than yourself? So we need to look at our code of ethics. And you have it in your handouts, a whole page that hopefully you will sign today to see if you are ready to think about being a funeral celebrant. What are some of those things on the code? Well, your ethical responsibilities to represent your role, to be truthful in that, to value justice, to have firm boundaries in place. Now, I was a hospice pastoral bereavement counselor for many years, and I worked with the terminally ill. Very often, the family members would say, hey, I own a barbershop down the street. If your husband wants a free haircut anytime, or my cousin owns the restaurant, you and your family can have a free meal anytime. That's an ethical boundary that cannot be crossed. So you need to follow a code of ethics, that you incorporate your own value system into this. You have to accept statements as true, no matter, even if you think, well, the family may not be open and honest, whatever they're saying is the truth. You need to normalize grief, and that means educating yourself about the grief process. You also need to know that you cannot discriminate against someone who is different than yourself. This is very, very critical. You will create a eulogy that reflects the family's needs and help them find meaning in the loss. You need to be comfortable in the funeral home and ensure that you are working with the bereaved in a manner that fits their background, their religion, their ethnicity. It's what they need. You need to also be comfortable working in a society that looks upon what you do in a negative way. I am so often asked, why would you get a master's in thanatology? Or what is that? It's the study of death and dying. Well, what would make you want to do that? Do you get that? Sometimes people say, why? Well, why not? Why not? Somebody has to do it. So while you are working on your code of ethics on that page, you'll see that you're not to make the families feel obligated for the funeral. If they don't want your services, then you say thank you and goodbye. You also need to build a sense of hope. I am a media representative. Media contacts me from across the country. There were men in the mines, and they'd say, the situation is hopeless, isn't it? And I say, no situation is ever hopeless. There is hope that even if they don't come out alive, there is hope that perhaps they did not suffer. There is always some type of hope. When I worked with terminally ill patients, they'd say, there's no hope, they're terminally ill. Yes, but there might be hope that I'd get a harpist there in time, or that I'd be able to recite the last prayer with them, or their family would show up before they took their last breath. No situation is ever hopeless. You must truly attain competency as a certified funeral celebrant through education and training. Education and training is critical. You can't just say, hey, I read a book, I'm ready to do this. You have to really be schooled and understand to see not only are you the right person for the job, but will you be effective in doing what you do. Our second objective is to look at communication skills. So, are you a good communicator? By a show of hands, who's a good communicator in this room? What about your nonverbal communication skills? Show me some nonverbal communication skills. Okay. Wow, nobody likes me. Oh, all of a sudden, everybody's doing... Right. So your posture, the way you move your body, are you picking lint off yourself? Are you fidgety? How well would you do as a funeral celebrant if you were fidgety up here? It wouldn't really work. So we need to understand that nonverbal communication is just as important as verbal communication. I'd like to quickly go over 10 communication skills. It's all in your handouts with a great deal more information. I want to gloss over it because it's really significant that you go home and read more about it. First, using open-ended questions. Do you do this? Do you use questions that require more than a yes or a no? Where you need information? It's kind of like pulling the story from the bereaved. You can also use close-ended questions where you have a yes or a no. You paraphrase, right, where you rephrase or you restate what they just said. Or you clarify, where you find out more information by probing for details. Show of hands, do you do this? If you don't, do you promise to try to do this? Good, good. Summarize before moving on. Let's recap what we just went over. That really works because it shows that everyone is being heard. And observing. We need to observe. It's a really good listening skill because what you do when you observe is you're looking for meaning behind the words. They may say one thing but then bolt from the room. What do you see when the bereaved is speaking to you? Brainstorming, very, very important. It's not just about what one person is saying in the family, but what is everyone saying? Are you giving each person an equal opportunity to share? And then referencing, if someone said something in the beginning of the funeral planning meeting, are you going back to it and saying, oh yeah, he already mentioned that. Let's go back to that. Good point. And good point is all about referencing. Validate the bereaved when they are sharing their story. Oh, I see that. Yeah, that's a good point. Or yeah, I like that idea. Or great thought. Don't overdo it, but let them know that you approve. They're scared. They're upset. And they're coming to you at a point in their life where they don't know what to do. And they expect you to have all the answers. And I know that celebrants have all the answers, right? Also, reflecting feelings rather than getting caught up in the facts, identify the messages behind the words. Our sorrows and our wounds are healed when we touch them with compassion. Do you touch others with compassion with your listening skills? Show of hands, who does? Okay, I'd like you all to lie and tell me that you all do, so I'm going to ask that question again. It'll make you feel good. Ready? Here goes. Buddha said that our sorrows and wounds are healed when we touch them with compassion. Do you touch others with your compassion? Wow, amazing. The takeaway here is a code of ethics will govern your conduct as a competent, compassionate funeral celebrant, and effective communication skills will help you create a ceremony that meets the needs of the bereaved. Do you think these 2 points are important? Do you promise to, when you go back to your hotel room or your home or your office, to get online and read more? Because this is just, thank you. Yes, she screams. Yes, because it's really important that I'm just showing you in the 30 minutes we're going to be talking about this, the significance of this topic. But it's up to you to have an action plan in place and learn more. The third objective is to identify ways to respond to challenges faced during funeral planning. What are these challenges? Well, these are the personality types that you will meet during funeral planning. Have you ever met a monopolizer? Oh, aren't they delicious? They talk about everything and they know what's going on, right? And then there are the drifters who kind of move away from what you're talking about or bring you to a point that has absolutely nothing to do with funeral planning or the life and death of the deceased. So you will need to learn how to deal with these personality types. In your notes, I gave you several different ways of communicating with these types of personalities. Then there are the negaholics. Have you ever met a negaholic? You're going to remain positive. Remember that smile we had a moment ago? You hold on to that. You will need it. Because even though they're so negative, you will keep bringing the positive into the funeral planning. Then there are the advisors. They advise everyone in the family what to do because they know what needs to be done, and they will let you know what needs to be done. But there's a person that takes it one step further, and they're the know-it-alls. Have you ever met one? During funeral planning, you will need to have the skills, the communication, effective communication skills to deal with that personality type. Then there are the quiet ones. The quiet ones are good. Quiet is good. It's not the bars that keeps the lion in the cage. It's the space between the bars. And it's not the musical note that makes the beautiful song. It's the space between each note. So silence and space is good, but not if you're the only one talking. Do you know what to do when you're the only one talking? I advise you to learn what to do when you are dealing with quiet bereaved. You may also meet a suicidal bereaved person. How do you know when that person says, I want to die, I want to be with my loved one, I want to just end my life and be in heaven with him? How do you know the intention of that plan, the lethality of that plan? Do you know what to ask to see, is this person just traumatically bereaved, or is their intention to take their life when you leave that room? QPR Institute trains men and women like yourself to learn the signs and symptoms of suicide. Awareness is key, so you feel prepared when and if that should ever happen. You should also be prepared for triggers. You meet with a family. Your mother just died, and the bereaved person is wearing your mother's perfume. What triggers in you? Or they bring out a plate of food that reminds you of your mom. So these different sights and sounds and smells and items, all these triggers Are you aware of your own triggers? Show of hands. Are you aware? You need to be, when you go into funeral planning, what is your trigger? My father died by suicide, so I know when I'm working with a family that's a suicide in the family, I know some things will come up in me and I need to be prepared. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, do you think you can learn what you need to be an effective funeral celebrant? And how much time do you think you need? Who said 2 days and it's done? A week? A year? What about a lifetime? Experience. That will be the true measure of whether or not you will be an effective funeral celebrant. Let's look at our fourth objective. And these are the determinants that influence the way people grieve. You are ready to be a funeral celebrant now. You've got the education. You have the heart. You have the empathetic level. You have the communication skills. You have your code of ethics. You know what personality types you might come in contact with, and you are ready. Well, are you ready for the different influences that may affect the person that you are working with? What will happen is you'll see different modes of death will bring about different responses in the bereaved, different reactions, whether it was a natural death, unnatural, intentional or not. Was it a sudden and unexpected death? Was it a traumatic death? Were there multiple deaths in the family? Are you dealing with not one, but maybe 2 or 3 deaths within that family? Was it an ambiguous loss where they never found the body, such as what happened with September 11th and plane crashes? Was it preventable, as in an alcohol-related car crash? What about all those secondary losses that family is dealing with? They're working with you to do funeral planning, but they're also thinking they may have to move because they can no longer afford to live in their home. Their age, how many cumulative losses over a lifetime did they experience? Or was this their first loss? And their gender. The research shows that we need to move beyond gender, that men and women are more similar than they are different in their grief. But what you will find in funeral planning is that there will be instrumental grievers, those who need to set up memorial funds, to, like myself, write books and speak about death and dying and educate others. Or there's the intuitive type that are very emotional and show or express their grief. Or then there's the dissonant type grievers who want to cry, but because of their family or cultural background believe that they can't. So you need to learn about the different coping styles when you're doing funeral planning. Their culture, their ethnicity, who they're connected to, and whether or not the grief is disenfranchised. Can they publicly mourn? Can they openly share the loss? A gay lover whose lover died and he's not allowed by the family to attend the funeral, that's disenfranchised grief. Or when someone says, why are you grieving as though your husband's dead? He only has Alzheimer's disease. That's disenfranchised grief. When I worked for hospice, I would go into the nursing homes, and one time I met one woman who was not my patient. She was just down the hall, and I would go in and out of the rooms. She was crying. And I sat with her and I was going to pray with her, and I said, what are you crying about today? And she said, my husband died. Today's his funeral. They're not letting me go. How do you respond to that? That's disenfranchised grief. And also, last but not least, how are they making meaning out of the story? It's all about the meaning, and you understand that as celebrants. The takeaway here is to know how to respond to the challenges and understand those things that influence grief will make you a better funeral celebrant. It is hard to do. Let's discuss how mourning theories are the foundations for rituals and ceremonies. I'd like you to take 1 minute and share with the person next to you What do you know about mourning theories? Take 1 minute. What do you know about mourning theories? Okay, less than a minute. Someone tell me what they know about a mourning theory. What mourning theory do you know? Stages of grief, absolutely. Because that is what most people will say. They have learned the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross model that came out in 1969. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, I've read all her books. She was an amazing woman. She worked with those who were terminally ill. And she created this model for those who are working with those who are terminally ill. She never wanted it to be for those who are bereaved. But in 1969, there were no other models until Colin Murray Parks came around and others, Catherine Sanders and other people who then said, you know, maybe we should not apply a stage-based model for those who are dying to the bereaved, because it simply doesn't make sense. So let's look at some of the models that do make sense. William Worden's model is one of my favorite. It's called the 4-task model. And what he says is that you have to first accept the reality of the loss. And you do that through the ceremony, through the rituals, through the letting go of the physical person. Always maintaining that spiritual connection, though. Accept the reality of the loss by processing the pain and adjusting to the world where the deceased is missing. And isn't that what it comes down to? They're here one day, and the next, they're missing. And then find an enduring connection with the deceased while embarking on a new life. And while you are embarking on that life, you are not letting go of the person who you were. You still bring that person with you, but the other person is physically missing. And that's where the spiritual connection comes in. I love this model, the continuing bonds model. And it's all about working with the bereaved to continue the bonds, to share with them that it's okay to talk to the picture of your loved one. It's okay to keep the color of the bedroom blue because your husband always liked blue. Even though it needs a new paint job, no, my husband liked this color. So that spiritual connection, she or he is still talking to them. Do you still talk to your loved one's picture? Do you still have a linking item, something that belonged to your loved one? These things are very meaningful. Maintaining that spiritual bond is rich. The others model is one that I love. Look what it represents: optimism, meaning, humor, resilience, self-confidence, spirituality. How can any of that be wrong? Then there's the post-traumatic growth model, which shows in the research that most people overcome the obstacles in grief. And most people move on with their life, incorporating and accommodating the death into their life. Personal strength, appreciation for life, a spiritual connection. Does any of this resonate in you? Show of hands. Good, good. The resilience model is also one of my favorites. It just means that you will be able to bounce back. Have you personally bounced back from loss? But remember, even though you bounce back, you're never quite the same. Never quite the same. But you maintain that spiritual connection and you cope by adapting behaviorally and cognitively. And you find resilience to cope. Recently, I did a radio program, and I invite you to go to Open to Hope Radio. It's a half-hour program on how I personally found resilience to cope with my dad's suicide. The takeaway here is that mourning theories can be the foundations for the ceremonies that you create. You will help the bereaved accept the loss, find meaning in the loss, be hopeful. But it's your role, your job, to help them do that. And that's not easy to do. And that's why it takes more than just a half-hour conversation. This is my place is to open up the window and show you what's out there. You need to step through the door and actually find those things that are going to make this make sense to you. The action you will take, the first action you will take, has to be the priority. I gave you information about a code of ethics, important stuff. I gave you information about effective communication skills and personality types and challenges and mourning theories. But what is the first thing you want to do with this stuff? What do you personally want to accomplish? What's the first thing you're going to do? When you think about that, then think about why you want to accomplish it and the steps that you will take to make it happen. What resources do you have available to you? What are your obstacles in your way? And how will you know if you're doing it right? Well, you'll know because it will come out in your body, mind, and spirit because of stress. Stress can weigh heavily on your heart. How many of you have ever felt stress? Yeah, it's true. And if you choose to be a funeral celebrant, sometimes the stress, the primary stress of those that you are supporting, may become secondary stress in yourself. But I'm going to give you the true definition of stress. You can write this down because it really is the only definition of stress. Stress is defined as giving birth to triplets. Believe me, this is a triple stroller that I would go through my community with and cars would stop. One thing you should never do is go for a walk with a triple stroller and your mom. Because you know how I would say to people, they'd say, are they triplets? Same dad? I'd be like, yes. The questions I would get. And finally, I would just say, I opère no English. No. And my mother would be like, oh, stop being so silly. Yes, these are my grandchildren, and that's Alan and Matt. And she'd stand there for 10 minutes and talk to everybody and anyone. Very stressful. You know what's more stressful than having triplets? Being a younger brother to triplets. When they were 3, I got pregnant again. My husband and I do not know how that happened to this day. But we brought the baby home from the hospital, and here we have Michael ready to karate chop him. And, you know, this is when you're supposed to watch the baby's soft spot. Not in my house. And then the other poor Matthew is with the knives, and Alan's just holding him down. So it really depends how stressed. I mean, who thinks that they're stressed too, compared to this kid? Right. I'd like to give you, as celebrants, a stress test. Are you ready? This instrument was used in a case study on stress at the University Medical Center in Washington. I'd like you to look at the 2 identical dolphins jumping out of the water. A closely monitored scientific study of professionals revealed that in spite of the fact that the dolphins are identical, a celebrant under stress will perceive differences between the 2. If someone perceives many differences between the 2 dolphins, then you're experiencing a great amount of stress. So look at the photograph, and if you find more than 2 or 3 differences. How many of you see any differences? None of you. Oh, 2 hands. Oh, right. Bunch of liars. It is important to maintain your resiliency. I need a couple of celebrants up here to help me hand some stuff out. Who wants to help? I'd like you to take this little guy out of the plastic and then kind of pull his arms, and we might need another one right up here. You don't have one. Right here, she needs one. Now, share with the person next to you what makes this little stretchy guy resilient. Take a minute. Okay. Does anyone want to tell me how this little stretchy celebrant is resilient? What makes him resilient? He's flexible. Excellent. Are you flexible as a celebrant? What else? He bounces back. Does that resonate in you? Do you bounce back? He doesn't scream or holler. Excellent. I recently did a presentation for police officers, and 2 of the gentlemen bit the heads off. I thought, they need help. It was great. It was a lot of fun. What else? He stretches. What else? What's it made of? Yeah, that is so significant. It's what's it made of? And what is made of, what are you made of, right? You need to know how far you can stretch it before it does what? That's right, it's going to snap. It's soft, like a soft heart. Do you know your point of no return? Where you're, okay, that's really important. Yes, reaching that point and knowing when to say, okay, I've had enough. Maintaining your resilience. Look at this dog and cat. They're so cute, right? Your desk at home, what does it look like? In order to be an effective celebrant, you have to be organized. Dealing with a lot of different families, a lot of different crises, situations. What does your desk look like? Do you eat right? It's important. A healthy lifestyle. Are you like these, what are they eating? Pizza? The nuts are just on the floor. The squirrels are going right for the pie. What would you eat? Are you the donut person? No. No. Do you avoid stimulants? You do not want to look like this pussycat. It is not a good thing. Who's going to make a promise they will not look like this pussycat? Thank you. Thank you. Look like him. Take a nap. Who's in it with me? Look at those hands. Oh my God. Throughout this entire shop, the hands were like this and like that. All right, she wants my hand up again. I'll do it. Oh, a little dog with his little penis. Everybody's like this. Yes, that's me. Okay. Celebrants are optimistic. They have a positive attitude and a good sense of humor. Is that cat getting hit with the ball in his face? No. Optimism. Say the word. It's a great word. Isn't that a great word? Love it. Years ago, I watched Saturday Night Live, and Stuart Smalley said, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Let's do it together. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Wow. Let's hear just from this side of the room. Now, there's more on this side, so you're going to have to really, okay. I'm not picking sides here. I'm just saying that there's more people on this side. Ready? I'm good enough.
I'm smart enough. And doggone it, people like me.
Yeah, I got one here. There's always somebody that does this. There's always someone in the audience. Now let's see this side. Are you ready? I'm good enough.
I'm smart enough. And doggone it, people like me.
Woo! Well done. Well done. I'm telling you. I'm impressed. If you change your thoughts, you can change your world. Are you the pussycat or are you the lion? Who wants to just be the pussycat? Sometimes, yeah. But how do you feel when you know you are the lion? Woo! I like that growl. Thank you for that. Celebrants like to have fun. Are you ready to have a little fun? Okay, need some help again. Make these babies fly. I want you to take your left hand and hold it up. Your right hand is the only hand that's going to move. Right hand against the left. The right hand is the only hand that moves. You might have a problem with a broken hand. Only remember that. Only the right hand. So keep your hand straight out. And only your right hand moves. Okay? And now, well, if you're lefty, you could do it the other way. Take the straw and put it in the top. And we want to place it right there. And just the right hand moves. You hold it out. And just the right hand moves. Remember, you got to keep it there. And you go right hand out. No, you're going backwards. Right hand out. Right hand out. Right. Oh, that's good. Right hand out. Wow. Workshops on bereavement and mourning is to realize that you are not bereaved. You are not mourning. You are not grieving. You are a celebrant who will move into the world of the bereaved and help them with their story to find meaning in it, to grow from the loss, to remain resilient. But you will go home and smile. Always remember to smile. What's the takeaway for celebrants? Well, on the back sheet of your handouts is a plain sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper. It's not the pink sheet. It's the last sheet. If you have a yellow sheet, a pink, I made a lot of different colors because I like the palettes. But take that last sheet that has nothing on it and rip it off. It's the last sheet in your handouts. Rip it off. Just an 8.5 sheet by 11, right, white sheet, tear it off. Hold it up, let me see it. Look around the room, they're all the same? Okay, now, put them back down. Now I'd like you to put your pens down and close your eyes and keep them closed for the entire minute of this little activity that we're going to do. At this point, I'd like you to fold your paper in half. No talking and keep your eyes closed. Now tear off the upper right corner. So you folded your paper in half and you teared off the upper right corner. Now fold the paper again. Now tear off the